recapping another busy week of prep sports. It's High School Sports Talk on ESPN Radio 94.1.
Back with you on this final Saturday of March for 2019. Matt Hatfield alongside the coach Ed Young. And Ed joining us now is a special guest. He's one of your favorites and ours, sports columnist, author, and television personality for ESPN. You can follow him on Twitter at Kurkjian_ESPN. We say good morning to Tim Kurkjian as the 2019 baseball season is underway. Tim, how you been?
I'm doing well, fellas. I'm on my way to Texas. I'm doing the Cubs-Rangers game tomorrow. Then I got the Braves and Cubs Monday and Wednesday, so life is good.
Oh, yes, it is. Great time of year. What year is this for you, Tim, with the Worldwide Leader?
This is 22 at ESPN. This is 40 covering baseball now. So I'm 62, and I hope I get to do this for a few more years because I still really love doing what I do, and I just love it when the baseball season starts.
So do we, Ed.
Hey, Tim, before we get into the baseball season start, because I know you were in Yankee Stadium opening day, and that's always special. Being a basketball coach, I got to ask you, how's your brackets? Do you have time to, A, fill it out, and B, watch it? Because I know it's the start of baseball.
All right, this is the first time I haven't done a bracket. We used to do a family bracket, and the kids got a little bit lost there, and my wife no longer had any interest. So there's no family bracket, and since I'm traveling all the time, I didn't even fill out a bracket this year, I'm ashamed to say, but it doesn't matter because I never got them right anyway, and it's probably better this way.
Well, Tim, you can always say that you got no games wrong this year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I went to Maryland, and they lost early. Kids went to Syracuse, they lost. So it's not that I'm not interested because I love basketball, but no brackets for me.
There you go. We've got the Elite Eight coming up later today here on ESPN Radio 94.1. But let's get to some of the storylines with baseball. A lot to open this season. Give us a couple that you're most captivated by, Tim.
Well, I just saw the Yankees, and I'm captivated by that division. I mean, the Rays are a pretty interesting team. The Red Sox are the defending champs, and the Yankees have really upgraded their pitching staff. Their lineup is a joke. It's so good. I'm really fascinated by the entire National League. I count 9 teams in that league, 9 out of 15, that have a really good chance to make the playoffs. And I think in the National League, without any great teams over there, if you make the playoffs, you got a chance to go to the World Series. So when you look at a league that has 9 teams that I believe could go to the World Series, I think that makes for a very competitive situation. So I've got my eyes on a million things right now, and that's what's so great when the box scores just start piling up.
Hey, Tim, you know I'm a big Yankee fan, but I want to make my partner feel good too. Of those 9 teams, I know the D-backs are not one of them.
Yeah, the D-backs are not one
okay,
of the
good.
9. I'm sorry to say that.
I just wanted him to hear that from the expert because he doesn't listen to me.
Well, they traded Paul Goldschmidt, who hit 3 home runs last night. So that's one reason that the Diamondbacks are not one of my 9 teams.
Well, I'm depressed about that, Tim. So let me ask you, Paul Goldschmidt in St. Louis, Bryce Harper, Philadelphia, Manny Machado, San Diego. Who has the best season of those 3?
I'm going to say it's Goldschmidt, and I've really seen a difference in him this spring. You know, he's very engaging. He's been very, smiles and all that. Not that he wasn't that way in Arizona, but I figured out from the people I spoke to, he was never really comfortable being the face of the franchise and the center of attention there because he was the best player for all those years. And I just don't think he was comfortable with it all being about him when he's the opposite of that. So he goes to St. Louis. It's Yadier Molina's team. It's the Cardinals. And now he could just play, which is great for him. And I think he'll have a great year. I think Harper will have a great year. I think Machado will have a really good year. But I'll pick Goldschmidt as having the best of the 3.
Tim, I wanted to piggyback on that, and Matt mentioned those guys. Big contracts. And we throw Mike Trout in there too, but he stayed with the Angels. Again, your thoughts on the big contracts and Harper, 13 years? Is this going to happen down the road more and more, or is it just a one-time thing?
Well, I don't think we're going to see a lot of these because I think Machado and Harper were the perfect storm of coming to free agency at this age, this young, this kind of track record. You just don't see too many free agents this young with this kind of track record, and that's why they got the years that they got. Plus, they were on a mission to set all sorts of records or get to $300 million, and ultimately they did. I just don't think anybody is now going to say, well, I have to set the record because Mike Trout is now making the most money in the terms of the largest contract ever given to a baseball player. I don't see anybody topping that anytime soon. So I think it will be unusual to see another 10-year deal. But, Mookie Betts is going to be up for free agency in a couple years, and he's still a young man. He's going to get an enormous amount of money. But I think it's kind of good that we've really gotten all these contracts, for lack of a better term, out of the way so we can now concentrate a little bit more on what's actually happening on the field.
We're chatting with Tim Kurkjian, ESPN Major League Baseball analyst here on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.1. Check out his books, including the latest one, I'm Fascinated by Sacrifice Flies, and you can follow him on Twitter, too, at Kurkjian_ESPN. If you want to send a question our way to Tim, you can call us at 757-687-9494, or hit us up on Twitter, too, at HS Sports Talk 941, HS Sports Talk 941. The phone line's open, too, at 757-687-9494. And Tim, this year we look at some local players from the Virginia area. Chesapeake's own Justin Upton is out with a toe injury, 8 to 12 weeks it looks like. How does that affect the Angels, A, and B? Looking at the situation with Mike Trout getting that long-term deal, how long will it take for the Angels to be a contender talked about with the likes of Boston, New York, Houston, and Cleveland?
Well, I had the Angels as an outside shot to win a wild card this year. They're probably the fourth of four teams that I had as wild card contenders. And I think they took a step back with Justin Upton being hurt for as long as he's going to be out. He was a critical part of that lineup, and now I'm not so sure about that team. But, the Angels won 80 games last year. They didn't win 60 games. Their farm system has finally started to make some progress. It's now decent. So they have a plan in mind to build around Mike Trout, but in order to win, they're going to have to take all this money that they've been making over the years, like most teams, and really go get some players. They need a few more. They need some more pitching, that's obvious, but they're not going to take Mike Trout in the prime of his career and waste that. They understand how important it is to get better and get better quickly. And I think it won't be long before Mike Trout is playing in the playoffs again.
Well, Tim, also, we have some other guys up there that from our area. Ryan Zimmerman, Justin Verlander played at Old Dominion, not from our area, but he played at Old Dominion. And, of course, the kid that's really taken people by storm lately is Brandon Lau. Any comments on those guys?
Well, Brandon Lau is a really interesting player because he just got a big contract for almost a completely unproven player. But this is also very good for baseball, I believe, where teams like the Rays are saying, this guy can hit, this guy can play multiple positions, and this guy's character level is so high that this is the kind of guy that we want to keep around, but the only way to do that, to keep him away from arbitration and free agency, is to sign him long-term. So he's an integral part of a very interesting team there, and they have interchangeable pieces, especially in the infield, and Brandon Lau's right in the middle of that, and I expect him to have a very productive season and live up to that contract because that kid can hit.
Yes, you can. Lau out of Nansemond River High School in Suffolk, where my colleague, the coach Ed Young, is the basketball coach. It's ESPN Radio 94.1, and we're joined by ESPN Major League Baseball analyst Tim Kurkjian here on the show. And ESPN Radio 94.1 is your home for Norfolk Tides baseball, the AAA affiliate of the Baltimore Orioles. And Barry in Norfolk writes us and wants to know, Tim, any hope at the end of the tunnel for the Baltimore Orioles?
So that tunnel's about 5 years long from what I could tell. I just saw the Orioles on opening day in New York. I did that game. And at least they have a plan now. At least they have a direction now. They waited way too long to get to it. They probably should have done this after the 2017 season, but they tried to win last year. Obviously, they only won 47 games. It was terrible. they're not going to be that bad this year, but they're going to really struggle, and they're going to struggle, I think, for several years. But this is what you have to do. This is what the Astros did. This is what the Cubs did, and this is what teams sometimes have to do to get better. To get good, you got to get really bad, and that's ultimately where the Orioles are right now.
Hey Tim, any team out there maybe we're not going to talk a lot about right now, but you feel they're going to get hot at some point and watch out for them?
Well, I would keep my eye on the Twins. The Twins are an interesting team to me because I think the Indians are in some trouble with some injuries to their club, especially with Francisco Lindor. And I know the Twins did some really nice things in the offseason. Jonathan Scope, Nelson Cruz, and I saw Byron Buxton this spring, and he's got a completely different body and a completely different attitude, and he's angry about being, not called up last September. I expect him to really turn the corner this year, but that's the one team that didn't make the playoffs last year that I look at and say, well, this team could win a wild card, and if the Indians have any more injury issues, it's not inconceivable that the Twins could win that division.
We got another Twitter question for ESPN Major League Baseball analyst Tim Kurkjian. Anna wants to know, do you see Madison Bumgarner being on the trading block?
Yeah, I do. I think the Giants are not a very good team, and they're not one of those 9 teams that I think can make the playoffs. And unless they sign him long-term, and their new GM, Farhan Zaidi, is not usually the type to give really long-term deals to pitchers. So my guess is, even though Bumgarner is still really good and really young, if they don't see that they can sign him long-term, I think the best thing to do would be to trade him. However, if they plan on contending next year or anytime soon, they have to sign him long-term. They have to say, we need to build around somebody, and there aren't too many guys better to build around than Madison Bumgarner.
I know Ed wants him in the Yankee uniform.
I wouldn't mind.
I think a whole lot of teams would love to have Madison Bumgarner, but the cost could be prohibitive. It should be very interesting.
But, you talk about rebuilding, Tim. How about San Francisco with Bochy announcing this is last year? Would that be a team that might have to just kind of blow it up and get that farm system fixed?
Yeah, they probably should have rebuilt a couple years ago, but it's hard to do that when you've had the success the Giants have had, when you play in San Francisco where they sell out almost every night, when the Warriors are now right down the street from them. I mean, you got to be competitive if you're the Giants. You can't just rebuild and have a bad team for 5 years, not in that place. So I kind of understand why they said, all right, we got to keep trying to win. But if they recognize this year they're not, they may have to make some moves, and who knows? It could start with Bumgarner.
Now, rule changes. I think the last time we had you on here, we talked about some possibilities. Now they've come out about, facing – you got to face all 3 batters, putting a runner on second base in extra innings. Tim, your idea on some of these rule changes and where are we going with all this?
Well, I don't think we're going anywhere with all this. I am totally opposed to putting a runner at second base to start the 10th inning. I mean, that is so against the fabric of the game. I'm also opposed to having every pitcher, face 3 batters. I'm totally against that also. I just think we're trying to reinvent the wheel here, and I think we need to all understand the reason the games take so long is we have 17 strikeouts per game. We have all these walks, all these homers, and a lot of stuff in between that is not very active. I would like to see baseball go back to, playing a little more fundamentally sound, running the bases better, put the ball in play more, but that's a huge adjustment to make. It's going to take some time, but I just don't think that the solution is to take the way baseball has been played for basically 150 years and make dramatic changes to it. I don't think the game needs that.
Tim, I agree with you. Matt and I were talking about it earlier. The International League, minor league baseball is going to put some of these rule changes into play now. And my comment was, if you don't like watching the game, it's too long, you can get up and leave, or you could turn the channel, you go cut the grass, whatever. Baseball is one of those pure sports tradition. I just think that's part of the game. And I agree. You made a great point. The fundamentals. We don't see enough bunting in games. Instead of, winding up and striking out all the time, how about put guys, with all these shifts, put a bunt down once in a while?
Yeah, we just don't do that anymore, and our players are not conditioned to it, and with our sabermetric information we have now, a bunt is not a good play. certainly wasn't a good play when Earl Weaver was the manager, but he had a great team with home run hitters everywhere. He was years ahead of his time. But I would like to see the game played a little crisper than it's being played now. I would like to see a few more hitters make an adjustment and hit the ball the other way, beat the shift. But again, that's pretty hard to do when you're facing the kind of pitching that these guys face on a nightly basis.
You can get his book, I'm Fascinated by Sacrifice Flies. Watch him on ESPN TV, hear him on ESPN Radio, and also check out his work on ESPN.com. He's Major League Baseball analyst Tim Kurkjian. Before we let you run, Tim, you got a World Series pick for us here in the final weekend of March that we'll look back on come October?
Well, I change my World Series pick like every day. I think I picked the Red Sox to beat the Dodgers again in a repeat of the World Series, but that was incumbent on the Red Sox finding a closer, which they don't have yet. It should be real interesting to see how that goes this year. But the beauty of baseball is we're not sure what's going to happen, and that's what makes it such a great and unpredictable game.
It is, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, Tim, the last repeat was the Yankees back in 99-2000. Has it been that long?
That's it, and that's what makes baseball so good is that we're never quite sure who's going to win and lose.
Well, it should be a lot of fun. Thank you so much for the time this morning. Enjoy your trips, and we'll be watching you on TV, all right?
All right, guys. See you.
Thanks, Tim.
Tim Kurkjian, our guest here on High School Sports Talk, presented by VirginiaPreps.com on ESPN Radio 94.1. Follow him on Twitter, too. That is at Kurkjian_ESPN, KURKJIAN_ESPN. He is the absolute best and just a fountain of knowledge when it comes to baseball, and also fun to I know you get a kick out of when Scott Van Pelt, some of those guys make them laugh, and Ed might have to get the Tickle Me Tim doll on the market. Tickle Me Tim, you love his laugh.
They get on him too. He's genuine. He loves the game. He is a traditionalist, but he doesn't mind changes that are going to improve things. He's just very good, and for him to give us some time of day is greatly appreciated.
Yes.
Because he's always being clamored for. Of the big city people, L.A., New York, San Francisco, a lot of places would have major league teams get him, but he's always agreed to come on for us, and that's what I really appreciate about him. He don't forget about the little people.
No doubt. I mean, you see him on Golick and Wingo and Dan Lebitard show, Tony Kornheiser show, PTI, baseball, all the different baseball programming, and we're thankful to have him on the program. Hey, we got to do our 5 best picks. We teased it this week on the 757 at 6. We got to do our 5 best over-under picks, and we also have another pair of Tides tickets to give away. And Phil Forbes, head baseball coach of the Menchville Monarchs, is coming your way too, as we'll talk about Phil's team, which is always in the hunt for a state playoff appearance, a state championship, and P5, who is looks like he's destined for stardom over there in Newport News. That's coming your way on your home for sports. We got it all from high school to college and pro. What is it?
ESPN Radio 94.1.